who will match our definitions will definitely fit in, but those who cannot fit in will inevitably match out. Subsequently, we then have to conquer fear by fearing to fear. And this is achieved by educating ourselves on who we are, what is our peculiarity in personality, what do we have, what do we have to protect or create, who is our enemy or friend, who is a member of the family, and how should we engage as Africans. Once we achieve this, my fellow Africans all over the world, our body will develop determination within to subjugate racism. Educating ourselves gives birth to the enlightenment of the mind that nobody can boo you like a boo in a China shop. However, education came to replace an empty mind with an open one. Therefore, if you are educated on who you are as an African, nobody segregates you or discriminates you along 14 lines. Moreover, racism is just a thought. Hence, let us detox our minds and allow unity, love to be our antidote to the noxious thoughts. Unto you, the august house of Africans in the entire world, hear my word today. You can only be taken advantage of if only you are mentally bound and mentally blind. Always remember, we are not defined by what we have, nor circumstances from outside, but we are defined by the Africanity, that is our integrity and the sound morals within us. Thank you. I am because we are.
Yes. Thank you very much for that wonderful report. I am because you are. Up next, you're going to have our brother, Edwin Chamba from Tanzania. Yes, Edwin, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Yeah.
You have 3 minutes to present your report.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As you said, my name is Edwin Chamba from Tanzania, and I have to present my report. And today I will be presenting about the ways to let every African have self-determination and fight against Afrophobia. Yeah, as the former speaker said, I'll be passing through him and using my knowledge so that I can deliver what we need to deliver. As we know that self-determination is the right of people to be freely determine their political, economical, cultural destiny without external interference. Yeah, self-determination as a principle, it is a legal right of people to decide their own destiny in international order. That is what we call self-determination. And as we said, the ways to let Africans have self-determination and fight against Afrophobia, we have some ways. One of the ways is to understand ourselves on who we are, what we need to do, and how to do it so that we can get development as African and success. That is the first thing that we can do to let every African have self-determination. Another thing is, as what my fellow Afik Ambia said, we need to detox our mind from depending on Europeans and other outsiders for our developments and success. That is what we need to do as Africans so that we can make a way to let every African have self-determination and fight against Afrophobia. Another thing is education and awareness. We need to spread some education to other Africans on how to have those self-determination as African and how to fight against Afrophobia. Another thing is non-violent resistance. We may do some non-resistance which are non-violent to who are doing us wrong accordingly, and They don't want to let us as African have our self-determination. We have to do some non-violent resistance, as this non-violent resistance aim to overthrow some authoritarian governments or through non-violent tactics, so that we can protest and have some maybe boycotts and something sort like that. Another thing is some legal actions. We have international courts and some sort of like something like that. So we have to seek an autonomy through judicial systems in this way, so that we make all Africans become in a way that, so that they let Africans, every African have self-determination and fight against Afrophobia. Another thing is cultural expression. Our cultural expression is, we may use our cultural expressions in a creative medium like music, dances, literature, and visual arts to spread needed messages and best messages for African self-determination, so that all Africans and some countries from Africa can gain self-determination through cultural expression. The last thing is maybe armed struggle and diplomacy. For armed struggle, I speak about what we see now in Niger. Even though some African country against Niger, but most of the African country are supporting Niger. What Niger did is good thing, because Niger is against the Europeans, is against the capitalists who are taking some things from Africa, who are making African poor while taking some natural resources from Africa to Europe. What we need to do is to take armed struggle, or maybe if we do diplomacy struggle and diplomacy struggle fail, we need to go to armed struggle. As I said, that what we see in Niger is a good thing, and Africans should do that for the best or the betterment of Africans. Thank you so much. For today, I'm out. I am because we are. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, Edwin Chamba from Tanzania. Thank you for that wonderful report. I am because we are. Yes, up next.
So
yes, thank you too. Up next, we're going to have our brother from Nigeria, Ife Sinachi Oroko. Yes, Ife Sinachi, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, you have 3 minutes to present your report.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Ife Sinachi Oroko. Let me start by giving a quick update concerning the Niger Cube, which is my neighboring country. At least what we are seeing currently is that the military option that ECOWAS intended to use is losing weight, support, and everything. Because yesterday, the army chiefs of staff of all the West African countries did meeting yesterday in Ghana, and even today they have not agreed in using military option. So they are still focusing on using diplomatic options. So even though, in as much as we don't support the sufferings of those in Niger, I don't think also that Cube is the solution in fixing their problem. So we urge all stakeholders involved to use a diplomatic means. Then moving forward, last time I made a presentation on Afrophobia, and I would like to continue in that my Afrophobia presentation so I can paint my picture very clearly. You see, most of the times we are so much focused on what the colonizers did to us, what they are doing to us currently, without thinking about what we are doing to ourselves how we are helping them promote those things that they did to us, how we are helping them, making sure that we are in line with what they want, not what we want. This is the picture I'm trying to paint. We are always talking about police profiling, like especially in the diaspora. We'll talk about neocolonialism, all sorts of exploitation, racism. You see, but I want to paint a picture that we Black men, you know, we are now helping them promote all these things because they came with all these things with the negative attitude which they call Afrophobia towards the people of Black descent. But ever since they left, it is now us that is projecting and promoting that Afrophobic activities. For example, I want to tell you that
Yes, 1 minute.
Okay, I want to tell you that the student that wrote his West African examination council exams and passed all the whole subjects, including his native language, he passed it, but the university in his own community refusing not to give him admission just because he failed foreign language in his papers is Afrophobic. And it is the university now that is promoting that kind of attitude. Instead of enhancing our own language, trying to you know, bring it into the system so that we can do away with the foreign languages. Like today, we have a church whereby a daughter of a woman will get married through the traditional marriage process. And that church will ban the mother of that child from receiving Holy Communion. I'm using Catholics, for example. That is a very huge Afrophobic actions, stopping a mother of a lady that got married in her own traditional right, just because she didn't, or she refused to do it in that foreign, which is also a tradition of the white people. Then they will now ban the woman from receiving Holy Communion. Our kings today, they claim to be the custodians of our traditional religion, but none of our kings today is can present himself as a traditionalist. So what are you custodianing? What are you preserving when you have abandoned your own religion, which you are a custodian of? So how do you pour the libation again? This is an Afrophobic act being promoted by our monarch system. You see, like the democracy that is causing problem in Niger. Originally, what Africa and the kind of leadership system that Africa have had before is a leadership system that is being elected by the divine providence, maybe through the oracles of the community or through aging. Because like in my own community before, we don't have kings, we don't have kingship. What we have is the oldest man in the community. And that is a natural process of attaining leadership with wisdom, with power, with everything that is required to be a leader. Then the other way around, like if you go to Yoruba's side of Nigeria, even till today, they still have that monarch system of oracles, community oracles, electing their leaders. And this is where they lead in truth and in spirit. Not this democracy today that you win by how smart. Once you are a smart person, you go and steal the people's mandate and claim you are leading. So these things are things we do unconsciously, but that is where our problem lies today. Our problem lies in our inability to realize that these guys have run the race. They have now passed the baton to us, and we have continued in that their relay. Instead of turning around to get what we want, we have continued in the relay that they passed the baton onto us. So I will continue trying to paint this picture so that we can also realize that we are contributing in these Afrophobic activities towards the people of Black descent. Thank you very much, and remain blessed. I am because you are.
Yes, thank you very much. That was our brother, Ife Sinachi Oroko. Thank you for sharing your idea. That was wonderful. Up next, we're going to have our brother, Yazid Idris. I hope I just pronounced well your name. Yes, you can unmute yourself.
Yes. Good day, everyone.
Yes, you have 3 minutes to present your report. You're welcome.
Good day, everyone. So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I just want to add from what Mbia and Ifisinachi have discussed earlier, because it is what I have think is the most important aspect of our intellectual and historic civilizations of Africa. One of the things that most of us are quite unaware of is that we are mentally enchanted and mentally downgraded, because most of, if we are to talk about what self-determination is about, we have to understand who we are, where we are, and where are we heading to. So as Ndia said, we are psychologically demoralized from and discouraged from our own selves. We have to understand whom we are in the first instance for us to know where we are going to. And as Efesenachi said, with regards to Niger Republic, as African states, we are just being maneuvered and used as an instrument to fight our own. Just take the example of this Niger Republic. This is one of the problems that face Nigeria and Niger as a neighbor, between which I myself am part of the system because I'm from northern Nigeria, and I'm one of the serious victims of, if this military aggression happens to be, we are the ones to experience a serious repercussion of it. But we are intellectually demoralized, as I said. We need to understand ourselves, find out our own problems, because when we are educated on our own historical background, as if it's said, you felt a foreign language, you have been denied an admission to study what you have wished for. But even if you have entered into the university system, what you are going to be taught is not exactly what will promote you to understand what your society and what your generation as an African have achieved so far in their historical origin. Africa and Africans have been dwindling themselves, drawing themselves back to where they were not originally there. Because even when we talk about the implication of European invasion and their activities and their subsequent policies towards our own society, is very destructive. But at least now we are on the same terrain with them. They give us our own right to govern ourselves and conduct our own affairs on ourselves. But we are still trying to be a stamp of them. When we are on ourselves, we have to know, we have to teach our generations their history, history and contribution of our heroes. You may find it difficult in our university system to see how our heroes, just like as Sardauna, Nkrumah, Nyerere, Mandela, all these are heroes that when we teach our children their contribution towards their emancipation, this will help us, our children, to understand that this Africa has a direction and has something that they can build upon. And as such, in the long run, they will understand this. This is us. This is Africa, and Africa is us. They will understand their own importance and African importance. So I prefer to talk about that intellectual overhaul of the mindsets of Africans.
Seconds at.
Pardon?
Yes, we have 30 seconds to wrap up.
Okay, no problem. So, pardon? I can't hear you, please.
Yes, you have 30 seconds to finish up with.
So I don't think time will not be at my side to all go around about this self-determination and racism. But I think I have all contributed to what I attempted to do justice to the question. Uh, I say big thank you for all of you guys. I stand because I am. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. That was our brother Yazid Idrisa from Nigeria. Yes, thank you. I am because we are. Up next, we're going to have our brother Zoe Owusu from Ghana. Yes, Zoe, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. You're welcome. You have 3
All
minutes.
Okay. So today I want to just share with you some ways to develop self-determination and fight against Afrophobia. Self-determination involves building the skill, mindset, and behavior that empower you to take control of your life. That is making decisions, setting your goals, and then persevering in the face of challenges like Afrophobia, racism, and humiliations of any kind. So here are some steps that I would like you to just follow if you want to cultivate that self-determination. So step 1, know yourself and then love yourself most. Understand your strengths and weaknesses, values and passions. Self-awareness is the foundation of self-determination. Step 2 is to cultivate positive mindsets. You should always have a positive mindset about everything. Practice positive self-talk, challenge negative beliefs, and focus on your potentials rather than limitations. Step 3, build a resilient environment. Embrace setbacks. As part of the journey, learn from failures. You can't stop failing, but you can actually bounce back from failures, adapt and bounce back stronger. Encourage a brother or a sister that has been a victim of humiliation, racism, or Afrophobia of any kind. The next step is you seek autonomy. Take initiative in your life. Don't wait for others to make decisions for you. Always say yes when you mean yes and say no when you mean no. Develop self-confidence. Resist oppressors' rule. The next step is manage your time. Prioritize tasks, set deadlines, and manage your time effectively to work toward your goals. A firm and resolved mind is never moved. Seek continuous learning. Embrace a growth mindset and continuously seek opportunities to learn, improve, and develop new skills. Join us every Saturday on our educative history call with our seasoned lecturer, Dr. Terry Wright. Create a support system. Surround yourself with people who believe in your abilities and encourages you, people who share love, people who are in for your growth. Get the iloveblackpeople.com app on Apple Store and Google Play Store. Recommend the safe places for your family and friends. And let's share this love together and protect our brothers and sisters. Celebrate achievements. Recognize and celebrate your progress and achievements. Don't wait for somebody to tell you how good you are doing, or don't wait for somebody to celebrate you. Always celebrate yourself. No matter how small, always appreciate yourself. Practice self-care. Take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and your mental well-being. Join us every Saturday on our health care class with our Queen Mother, Nana Equia. Your self-determination requires a strong foundation of self-care, and she is right there to give you all you need to take care of yourself. Stay persistent. Stay committed to your goals. Even when faced with challenges, perseverance is key to achieving self-determination, and you must be self-determined to succeed. Remember that developing self-determination is an ongoing process. You do not stop. We are always growing and growing. Do not quit. Quitters don't win, and winners never quit. Brothers and sisters, let's stand for Africa, the love of blacks. Say no to all forms of humiliations, racism, and Afrophobia. Live it, love it. You are black. We are black. I love black people. I am because we are. Ambassador Zoe Owusu reporting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Zoe Owusu from Ghana. Thank you for that wonderful report. I can see the comment section that they're thanking you for motivating everyone. Up next, we are going to have our brother Sule Molo from Ghana. Yes, Sule, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, Yvonne, I can hear you.
Yes, you have a chance to present your report.
Okay, thank you very much. Today I've appeared in a traditional form. Okay.
Yes, I like it.
Okay. So let me just go straight to the point because I have limited time. You see, self-determination is the most important aspect in everyone's life. And it is also a tool to measure your achievement. Self-determination is a tool that helps every individual to achieve his or her aims or targets on this planet Earth. It also guides the individual or group of people and set principles for us towards our dreams. Without self-determination, you become aimless in life or on this planet. We, the Black people or Africans, lack this important tool. Without determination, how would you know whether you are progressing or not? It helps us in so many ways. For lack of self-determination, that is why our dear continent, Africa, is like the way we see it today. We have no aim or target on this planet today. And it is all because of how we were brought up through diverse ways and misindoctrination. Today, you even ask the most educated person as we know today that what is or are their aim in life? The first answer will be he or she wants to go to heaven and then enjoy, followed by idols that we don't even think of producing them with our own resources, which are phones, cars, TVs, and many more. Meanwhile, the Creator has blessed us with everything that humanity needs to feel happy on this planet. We allow everything to go in raw state to the West, all because we lack determination in life. The Europeans or the Western people had the dream of building their lives. That is why they traveled from their continent to ours to find resources. That is self-determination. They knew what they want to achieve, and they worked hard to achieve that. Afrophobia, on the other hand, came in as the result of what we were taught and the suffering that we found ourselves in. We Africans were united, and we had a strong cultural values pertaining to strangers who are among us in our land. That is why our ancestors welcomed the white people into our land, and later they turned to buy us as slaves. So that one, we get it on Genesis chapter 15, verse 13 to 14. Today I've added Bible verse, that's it. We have lost that cultural values which teaches us to love our brothers and sisters today. We allow the West to divide our continent into smaller units in order for them to conquer us. Because divide we fall and unite we stand strong or firm. Sir Frederick Lugard brought the principle of
Yes, Suleiman, can you hear us? Okay. Yes, Suleiman, you are on mute.
Yeah.
Yes, you have 30 seconds to finish.
Oh, sorry. So let me just summarize it. So for we Africans to come together and fight Afrophobia, we have to take all the physical boundaries that were set by our enemies, which are the Europeans, in order to conquer us. So when we are able to take it out, we will see each other as brothers and sisters, and we will love each other. So I am because we are. Thank you, Yvonne. Greetings to
Yes.
everyone.
Yes, thank you very much, Sule, for that wonderful report. I am because you are. Yes, up next, we're going to have our brother from South Sudan, Joseph Mulesuku. Yes, Joseph, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Yvonne.
Yes, you have 3 minutes to present your report.
Thank you. So concerning this topic, I would like to speak on self-sufficiency and as a path to peace. Last 2 Saturdays, I focused my talk on African wisdom, particularly the wisdom of the people of South Sudan and how that wisdom has sustained them for millennia. I also then spoke last Saturday about Africa's need for peace and emphasizing that Africa is not as peaceful as it should be and is in fact becoming increasingly unstable, contrary to the wishes of our people and despite efforts by AU to foster peace. So this is the line of discussion I would like to continue because I believe peace is the most important need of our generation today. The problem of peace in Africa is the problem of perpetual dependence on foreign aid. This has been built over time upon the manufactured ignorance of our people, particularly the educated elite. So we have also been trained to look outside solutions to our problems and to disregard the answers that come from within us. Foreign solutions are regarded as the right solutions, while local solutions are despised as bad or alternative solutions. And we even allow people who know little or nothing about us to define our problems. This kind of thinking is actually what has made our society dependent and live for the interests of other people. As a result, despite the progress made towards peace and prosperity, extreme poverty.
So we can't hear you. We can try to raise your voice a bit.
All right. So I was saying actually, as a result, despite the progress that has been made towards peace and prosperity, extreme poverty has continued to rise. And, you know, as we insist on begging those people to continue giving us aid. So what we don't seem to understand is that what has not worked for over 50 years since independence is unlikely to work in the next half century. So maybe what we need to ask is really, could this help with the very cause of the problems that it is claiming to solve? As our great author Chinua Achebe once said in his book that...
yes, you have seconds left. You can try to...
Yes. So as Chinua Achebe said one time that when a handshake goes beyond the elbow, we know that it has turned into another thing. So perhaps we Africans have accepted foreign aid for far too long that without realizing that it has in many cases become the very cause of the poverty and the instability that we have. So even though aid in itself may not be the problem, I believe that when aid makes the beneficiary dependent on the benefactor, then it actually works counter to the interest of the person being helped. And it is wise for that beneficiary to discontinue that help, because otherwise it makes them slaves and permanently impoverished. Therefore, my request and my plea to the Africans to insist on becoming self-sufficient in all areas, especially education, agriculture, media, science, and technology. We have to properly educate ourselves about our land and our people so that we will be able to use our resources for our own benefit. In other words, we must produce what we consume and consume the things that we produce in order for us to be free. And in that way, we can be able to move for this, what we call self-determination. And we'll be able to take our destiny into our hands. Thank you. I am because we are. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much, Mulesuku Joseph. Thank you for that wonderful report. I am because we are. We're going to have our last speaker from Sierra Leone, Altigu Bah. Can you hear us? You can unmute yourself. Yes,
definitely.
you have That's to present your report.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you guys on this Zoom call. It has always been a pleasure. And I am an ambassador from Leon, as you guys know. Let me go straight to the point. I do not have enough time to talk. So, like, we're speaking on the perspective of self-determination and stopping ourselves from being racially discriminated. And I have thought it fit. I tried to make a note, but since I look at the time wasn't enough for me to give a supplement here. So I decided to speak out my mind as I am sitting here. So we cannot talk about racism. We cannot talk about self-determination without being liberated religiously, or without being, we are always discriminated. We cannot do things on our own. So what is the self-determination? And that has been the question. First of all, in order for us to talk about self-determination, we must ourselves economically, politically, and culturally. And not talk of self-determination, that our leaders in the continent of Africa in Europe and that still colonialism in Africa. I would view, and I cannot stop with opportunity. Why I'm saying there is a semi form of colonialism that African, let me say, 400 years ago, we are the people that we are extracting from the continent of Africa. And now our leaders are people that are extracting for the Europeans. They are the people extracting our resources and taking it to Brazil, to different parts of the world. So we are now enslaved by ourselves. We are now enslaved by ourselves. We are no more able to do it within the premises of our mindset, except with the intervention of these people. And that is what we need to decolonize. That is what we need to rectify as people.
Yes.
Another thing here, which I always have on mind, that Africa can develop if we recognize these.
Yes, Altibu, can you hear us? Okay, I think they are having some issues with their network. So we are going to continue with the Pan-African Healthcare class with Nana Akua. And if you would like to receive a shout out from her, you can turn on your camera. She really enjoys teaching while watching these beautiful Black faces. Yes, Nana Akua, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay,
I'm gonna
yes.
do like I'm gonna do like Dr. Wright. You'll see me in a second.
Okay. You're welcome.
she always be like, you'll see me in just a second. I had to move from where I was, so you'll see me in just a second. All right. It was better where I was, but it was people there, so I was not gonna have enough quiet. So good day, everyone. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Afiki and Mburu and Ifa Sanache and Yazid and hey Candace and Manuel and Edwin. Hey Yvonne, how are you?
I'm okay. How about you?
I am good today. I feel better. I was not feeling too great last week, but I'm fine today.
Okay,
thank you. So let me see. I was pulling up some. I think I got them today. So let me just pull it to the top here. So today we are going to continue, and I am going to start switching up a little more because I know we have some regulars and some of this becomes repeats. And so I think that I try to kind of switch up a little bit and keep it interesting. Then I always feel like I don't want to skip something that I typically discuss, but I'm going to at least have one additional handout, and if I can manage to pull up some other ones, I will. So what we'll talk about today is just the importance of cleansing and detoxification. And so we know that it's important to cleanse. We eat every day. We basically consume, right? We consume food, we consume stress, we consume, bad news, we consume negative people. We consume a lot that affects us mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And so there's always a need to sit back, detox, rejuvenate, prepare the mind, body, and spirit to kind of continue on so that we can do the things that we are put here to do, right? And so we are going to talk today about detox. And I welcome any questions. What I'd like is a little more feedback. I like interaction. I've kind of gotten away from that. I think I used to try and be like, please indulge me, answer this in the chat and those sorts of things. And some people have and do, but feel free if you have sort of a question or you can add to the discussion. I would love to have your input. So let's talk about what detox and cleansing are. Usually, especially for these purposes of the class today, I use these concepts interchangeably. So detoxification is pretty much the process of removing a poisonous or harmful substance from the body, or neutralizing or mitigating the effects of that poison or that harmful substance. Cleansing is a process of making something thoroughly clean, ridding the body of unhealthy, unnecessary substances, cleansing by washing. Usually, especially if we're talking about physically, we're talking about washing usually with water. It may be with water and herbs. It might be internally cleansing or washing out our colon and our other filtering organs with some sort of formula or combination of herbs. We only discuss those natural occurring substances and how to naturally do these things. And so we're talking about purification. And while this section primarily we're talking about physical, know that there is that spiritual and emotional and mental aspect. We know that there are times that we need to fast, right? And we need to fast not only from food, we may need to fast from talking, we may need to fast from using profanity or curse words. I've needed to do that, and I have done that. When I was in training to become a traditional priest, I stopped cursing for 3 years. You can imagine that after that graduation, I probably started and have been 10 times worse. But there are moments where we do need to kind of fast from or stop or halt our regular activities so that we can spiritually and emotionally and mentally prepare. We may need to fast or cleanse from negative people, negative self-talk, stressful situations, the ones that we can avoid. There are some situations that we involve ourselves in, and they're not required, they're not necessary, and we just do them because we're used to doing them, or maybe because someone's requested us to do them. But those things that we don't have to do, that we know bring stress, we have to fast or discontinue those activities. And so I think those types of things lend to our spiritual and emotional well-being. We may have to fast from sex, fast from being in a relationship. A lot of times there are different addiction programs, for example, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's eating. These kind of programs usually will discourage you from being in a relationship, right, with another person, because you have to focus on your person, yourself, right? And that can sometimes interfere with your healing process. So there are a lot of things that we can do to deal with our spiritual and emotional selves. So I wanted to at least mention that, because that is not the bulk of this section of class, but it is important. You know, we may do the spiritual fast or through our churches or our spiritual systems, and the obvious is, okay, we're not eating from sunup to sundown, or we're not eating for a number of days, or what have you. Of course, coupled with that is that inner work. So you're fasting from food, but you're also spending extra time praying or meditating, doing service work. So all of these are things we can do outside of, or in addition to, our churches or our spiritual systems. But know that that's just as important as this information that we're about to go over. So if we were talking about physically cleansing and detoxifying our bodies, we know that there are several ways in which to do that. So we've talked about fasting. So we know that there might be fasting from solid foods, where we only take in liquid foods, whether it's just freshly pressed juices and herbal teas, or particular juices, or particular herbal combinations. Some people do water fast. I'm not really a proponent of that, but we've talked about that concept of fasting. Also, there are detox diets that we may participate in terms of methods of cleansing, where we are doing probably the best or most often used detox diet that I've used is what's called taking in like a mild food diet. So you're detoxing from, say, sugars and sodas and meats and things of that nature, and you do what's called a mild food diet, where you are not using any, like I said, sugars, or you're not using any black pepper, only cayenne or red pepper. You're not using any processed foods. If you're eating any nuts or seeds, they're raw. If you are doing any kind of oils, it's pure oils, no margarines, no butters, only say coconut or olive or grapeseed or some of these natural oils. So there are certain components to a mild food diet. Predominantly, of course, eating fruits and vegetables. And again, no additives, no food colors, no sugars or artificial sugars, things of that nature. We know that we might do cleansing by using different herbal formulas or homeopathics. So we'll talk about some of those things, but we know that there are different herbs that detox the body, and we will specifically go through those. We know that we can do detox full body baths or foot baths, where we are using whether salts or clays or herbs to detox, to draw out toxins from the body. Through the skin, through the feet, through the reflex points or reflex zones that are in the feet. We know that we might cleanse or detox the body with massage. And this would be physically manipulating different parts of the body to move any stagnant energy, to relieve any tight or compromised muscles or muscle groups in the body. This would be good for people who suffer from different arthritis pain or back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, things of this nature. People who just overall are fatigued or have soreness and stiffness throughout the body. Massage, different types of massage is great for that. It might be Swedish, it might be Tai Chi, not Tai Chi, what's it called? Oh, I'm forgetting. Shiatsu massage. It might be reflexology. It might be deep tissue. hot stone. There are so many different types of massage treatments that one can use. And these have a purpose of kind of moving stagnant energy and relieving sore, achy muscles in the body. And then we also know another cleansing method is skin brushing. And so this is where we are actually dry skin brushing our arms, our torso, our legs, across our back, to stimulate the lymphatic system and to increase our ability to resist disease and illness. And this, of course, also will slow the way any dead skin cells that are on top of the skin. And we know that the skin is our largest organ, and it is a path of elimination. So we know that skin brushing can be an important tool to cleansing the body. When we are doing any type of detox or cleansing, we know that there are certain side effects or symptoms of that detoxification. And so we know there might be body aches, there might be headaches, there might be body odor, bad breath, weakness, purging, skin rashes, fatigue. All of these are common symptoms. So be prepared for it. Sometimes extra rest will help alleviate these things. Sometimes you may need some sort of pain relieving herbal remedy for these types of things. We've talked about this earlier some weeks ago when we were talking about herbs and homeopathics. There was a handout about pain relieving herbs or even pain relieving foods, right? So these are things like your white willow bark and meadowsweet and valerian. We know foods like pineapple and clove and blueberries, cherries. Those are just certain foods that can help to alleviate pain. Even the hydrating foods that we've mentioned, these can sometimes assist in relieving pain. So there was a handout we've done where we talked about cucumbers and cantaloupe and watermelon and celery, and these different foods that are predominantly water that can help alleviate pain in the body as well. So when we talk about paths of elimination or how waste leaves the body, these are our paths of elimination. Not all, of course, are actually organs that detox, right? Most are just a means of which the body releases our toxins and waste from the body, right? So the colon itself is not causing the detoxification, but it is the organ that waste products are moved into from the small intestines. And then of course, its responsibility is to move it out of the body with that action of peristalsis that moves waste through the colon, which is the large intestines, and out the body through the rectum and anus. We know that the skin, there are different toxins that are released through the skin, but the skin itself is not detoxing the body, but it is in fact a organ or a method in which waste is removed from the body. We know this when we get different rashes, boils, cysts, abscesses, different physical manifestations on top of our skin to show that the body is doing some sort of detox or cleansing, or that there is in fact some sort of illness that's perhaps on the horizon. And, you know, the body is saying, okay, we have to do a cleanse because something is about to happen or something has happened and we're trying to remove it from the body. So again, it itself is not detoxing, but it is a path in which toxins are removed from the body. Same thing with the lungs. We know the lungs are responsible for us taking in and releasing air, or oxygen, I should say. But we know that the carbon monoxide and other toxic gases that come into the body, it flows out through the lungs. Now, the kidneys and the liver, they do actually filter and detox waste. Not that they're any more important than the others, but we know that they do have that specific function, and that is in fact what they are in the body for. The liver is purifying and detoxifying the blood through the body. Kidneys are flushing and detoxifying and removing other liquid waste from the body. So let's talk about how, and I think one of the handouts that I did get to pull up was in fact kidney cleansing herbs. So let's just start with that. So we know that okay, and so these are just a few of the kidney cleansing herbs that one might use. Parsley, cilantro, horsetail, burdock, stinging nettle, milk thistle, gymnosperma. I don't use that one. I think that one's an Ayurvedic herb. So I think that one comes from India. And then marshmallow root. But these are all herbs that are good for cleansing the kidneys. So we know that we might do this in either tea form or tincture form. If in fact we are really trying to do a thorough cleanse, as you may have heard me say before, I'm not a big fan or advocate of herbal teas. I think you have to drink too much to really get the desired impact. So if you are doing a cleansing in particular and you're trying to really have a positive effect on cleaning, the kidneys, I really suggest that it be through an herbal extract of these herbs or a tincture where it's used in a solution or a formula. Usually it's grain alcohol, but it can be vinegar, it can be vegetable glycerin. We know that in India, they are heavy users of milk as the medium or solvent in which they extract the potency of herbs into, but something to where the herbs have been infused in a solvent for at least 2 to 6 weeks to strengthen that, and then you taking it at say 2 teaspoons or so at a time, or 1 tablespoon 3 times a day. This is just going to give you more of the herb than you would get from a cup of tea. However, if you're a tea drinker and you can easily drink 4 to 6 cups of tea a day, tea may be a good option for you. So let me just switch back to. So we were talking, so let's go through each. So we just did kidneys, and we may come across another handout on the kidneys, but let's talk about the liver. I think if you've been here before, you've seen this handout. So we know there are some foods and herbs that are listed here that we know are good to use to cleanse the liver. Foods like grapefruit, beets, carrots, green tea, apples, broccoli, lemons, limes, arugula, walnuts, so many foods, cauliflower, cabbage, avocado, spinach. These are all good for cleansing the liver. We know that certain herbs or spices, as some people would refer to them, are also excellent for the liver. Cilantro, turmeric, garlic, these are excellent liver cleansing herbs. We also know, though, that there are several other liver cleansing herbs: burdock root, yellow dock, milk thistle. I think milk thistle was also on the kidney list, but there are several herbs that are well known for cleansing and detoxifying the liver. There's always an option of doing not so much a fast, but a cleanse, whether it's a day, 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, where you're predominantly using those foods that were mentioned previously. This just gives sort of a menu, if you will, of what you can do on a 3-day liver cleanse. Pretty much you're using water and juices and herbal teas, and breakfast and lunch and dinner that consist of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. So that's pretty much the model there. Here's a recipe for a beet juice or a liver cleanse juice, which contains beets and carrots, lemons and cucumber and ginger. This one has some cucumber, celery, and pineapple in it. And we've talked before about turmeric and just how it is definitely considered sort of a superfood or a super herb. These are some of the benefits of the turmeric. And in addition to those kidney herbs that we mentioned earlier, I know parsley was already on that list, but in addition to the herbs we mentioned, we also know that foods like celery and cucumber and lemons are excellent kidney cleansers as well. If we're talking about cleansing the colon, we know that aloe vera, flax seeds, alfalfa, cascara sagrada, senna, fennel seeds, all of these types of foods are excellent for moving the colon or the large intestines to evacuate. We know that we should evaluate what our stool looks like. I'm not sure it is in the way. So I won't actually, I can't move this. So I'm running out of time anyway, but what we should note about this is that we should always keep track of what our stool is looking like. It should look around 4 and 5, where it's soft, it's fluffy, it floats, and it's not hard, really rock-like pieces, nor is it completely liquid and completely mushy. And so the lungs, there's not a handout in here about the lungs. We know that there are several herbs that are excellent for the lungs. These are things like licorice root and lungwort and mullein and horehound and wild cherry bark and elderberry and things of that nature. And then we know that, as we discussed in the stress release class, we know that also breathing exercises, conscious breathing is one of the best ways to purify or detox the lungs. So be very mindful of all the different ways in which to assist in the elimination of toxins from the body. Drinking plenty of water is always going to be a good answer, and eating as healthy as possible, not over consuming your foods, making sure that you are releasing your waste regularly. We have to have regular bowel movements, at least 1 a day. If we can do 2 or 3, that's great. So these are all things that we have to consider when we're talking about cleansing and detoxifying the body. So join us next week. We'll pick up on that and we'll talk a little bit about high blood pressure and diabetes, and if you have any other concerns. I will stay on for a couple of minutes and see if anyone had anything they added into the chat. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
Yes, thank you very much, Nana, for that wonderful lecture regarding the cleansing and detoxification. I can see that a lot of people enjoyed. They even asked questions in the comment section. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Yes, up next, we're going to have the Pan-African History class with Dr. Tyrone Wright. Welcome.
Hello,
Dr.
everyone. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and you can kind of sort of see me, but I don't want you to see me yet. I've got to move to my seat. Okay, so welcome to the Pan-African History and Organizing course. So you all should have watched the 2 videos that I sent you that were relevant to the last 2 weeks. And then I sent this morning, which is actually our reading for this week coming up. And I'm going to actually give you a video as well. But you got a document from Nkrumah. And I'm a little, I guess we'll talk about it afterwards. I'll ask Yvonne, but I'm confused in terms of what number week we're in, because I know that we've extended to 8 weeks this cycle instead of 4 weeks. So Yvonne, what's the number of the week that we're in? Do you know?
I think this one, let me double check.
Because I noticed that we did not change the number of the course. This would be actually class 25, but I still see 24 in the
Okay, I'll follow up with you.
Okay, all right. All right, so anyway, you have, if you look in Telegram, which I'm going to pull it up for you all anyway, on my own, you will see that we have Nkrumah, Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah's text, The Need for Union Government in Africa. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today, just a little bit in terms of Nkrumah, what he did. I like to slow it down just a little bit. Sorry, guys, I'm going to be on camera in a few moments. I just want to get my setup together. But I'm slowing it down because I do think it's important that we do give Nkrumah a little light, shed a little light on Nkrumah and his contributions and how he actually shapes this conversation about continental unity. So normally I jump right to Amilcar Cabral, and you should have watched the documentary. So you would have seen all of these individuals as Africa is coming into independence. But Nkrumah is notable in the sense that, I hope I don't know if I have the best lighting here. Nkrumah is notable in the sense that he is, revolutionary and ahead of his time. I want you to get better lighting. Let's see. One second, let me get some better lighting. Nkrumah is ahead of his time in the sense that he not only says that Ghana can't be the only independent African nation, although it is the first to throw off the cloak of colonialism, but that it means nothing if it is not in line and it is not signal that the rest of Africa will be independent and free from colonialism. And listen, we're still on that path, right? Because as you all have been watching recent developments, I hope you are, I'm going to touch on it, and I touched on it last week because I think it's important for what we're doing to be connected to what is actually happening in the world. And so because you're not living in the past is informing the present. And I'm sure most of you are watching what's happening on the African continent with Niger, with France, with various African countries responding to it, to the issue of the pipeline, to this commentary about Russia and how Russia is supporting Africa. I spoke on that last week, how we should feel about that, how we should keep it in perspective, know the history, understand. And there is a video, I guess I'll share it. It is not necessarily about Pan-Africanism, but it is the history of Russia and why Russia did not engage in colonizing Africa in particular. And it's important to know that it wasn't just simply that they were not racist in the way that so much of the Western world is, but it is important to understand that there are environmental and resource issues that did not make Russia inclined to engage in colonizing. And also, yes, their philosophical line, their ideological line, their positioning in the world, they were not aligned with imperialist endeavors, okay? So there's a whole host of factors that contribute to the fact that Russia did not participate in that. So it's important for us to understand. But it's important for us also to understand our subject today, Kwame Nkrumah. It's interesting because people like Nkrumah and many other Pan-Africanists that would emerge on the African continent during this time would be Marxist and Leninist in terms of their ideology. That's important to know, but it's also important to understand that not all were pigeonholed into this Marxist-Leninist ideology, because some, like Amilcar Cabral, would come along and understand that, you know, African people, we have our own plights in the world, and we cannot directly just mimic someone else's analysis, okay? That our analysis is the most important, and that our circumstance is quite different from that of Eastern Europeans who were engaging Western Europeans and, you know, having their own revolutionary movements in that context, okay? So I'm gonna share the document. Hold on one second. Let me take myself off camera, but I'm going to share the document. I just want to make sure that I have the screens right. I'm going to go into our course and let's see. Okay. Let me share the document that I posted, and we'll just go over it. I want you, if you haven't already watched Cuban African Odyssey, please go and watch. It's already up in there. And okay, it should be okay. So okay, so this is our course, and here is the document, right? Nkrumah, the need for a union government in Africa. So I've posted it there. Okay. And this is aside from me sharing some information about Nkrumah, this is really the topic of our conversation, because I do think that it's important to revisit this because of the moment in time in history that we are in right now. We may see, I think personally, in terms of the things that have been happening and the climate that is that has risen on the African continent, I think that we're going to see some things change, and we're going to have a moment to see whether or not, once again, we are ready for revolution, as Kwame Ture would say. Are we ready for revolution, meaning change? Are we ready for Pan-Africanism, which would be a change, because we have not been functioning completely in that tradition up until now? And are we going to have another chance? So this speech right here is by Kwame Nkrumah. He offers this speech in Cairo Summit Conference, Organization of African Unity, which is an organization that he initiates. Now, if you remember, when we read Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanist, right? We talked about the first Pan-African Conference, right? And then we spoke about the Pan-African Congresses initiated by Du Bois. And Du Bois initiating those conferences in 1919 would in actuality be the initiator of the body that would produce the Organization of African Unity. So let me say it in another way. W.E.B. Du Bois would be the sole survivor of that conference in 1900 called the First Pan-African Conference. The 1919 conference would be initiated by Du Bois and others. And by this time, 19 years after the first conference, he would be the sole survivor of the first Pan-African Conference. The congresses, the first of which, and I'm going to share the Congress resolutions, the congresses of which there were 5, the first being in 1919, would be continuous. And that was the key difference between the conference and the congresses. The congresses were continuous conferences, okay? Meant to hold over in the way that you think of even the Congress wherever you live, whatever the government's Congress is, okay? So they are continuous meetings where you deliberate around the issues, and that becomes the think tank for African leadership on the continent of Africa. Out of that body, the congresses comes the Organization of African Unity, initiated now by Kwame Nkrumah. Very important, because when we talk about Pan-Africanism, you're seeing the connection. Here's this Du Bois. Du Bois is not always right. Du Bois got some questionable stuff, but he's got some good stuff too, right? He identifies with Africa. He understands the assignment, and he continues the vision of Pan-Africanism for it to end up on the continent of Africa, become the continuous think tank for African leadership. And here comes Nkrumah. Okay, here comes Nkrumah, the first in line to really manifest this aspiration of independence for Ghana, the Gold Coast at the time. Nkrumah has studied in the United States. Actually, there's a meeting place, and I'm not saying that Nkrumah and Du Bois meet in the United States, because we know that they have a relationship later on. Nkrumah eventually invites Du Bois to the United States when Du Bois is finally like finished with the United States. And he says, come and write the Encyclopedia Africana and come home basically to Africa. Okay, so that's a very interesting relationship between them. But my point is that Nkrumah comes to the United States, is educated at Lincoln University, at University of Pennsylvania. Du Bois has had a stint at University of Pennsylvania, only to be sitting in the hallway with his Harvard degree in history, doing work there. He was treated very poorly by University of Pennsylvania. That being said, Du Bois writes something important. He does the Philadelphia Negro, but ultimately he has initiated something by this time called the Pan-African Congresses. And later on, that would be the setting through which this organization right here, Organization of African Unity, would emerge, okay? So there's all these connections, right? Du Bois born in the United States, and Nkrumah born on the continent, comes to the United States. There's some level of intersection at some point, and ultimately, for those of you who know the longer history, Du Bois dies in Ghana and is there under the invitation of Kwame Nkrumah. Okay, So we have this dialectical relationship that's very important to maintain. So I'm going to read a little bit of it to you. Speech at Cairo Summit Conference, Organization of African Unity, July 1964. Chairman, the year that has passed since we met at Addis Ababa and established the Organization of African Unity, I have had no reason to change my mind about the concrete proposals which I made to you then, or about the reasons I gave for my conviction that only a union government can guarantee our survival. On the contrary, every hour since then, both in the world at large and on our continent, our own continent, has brought events to prove that our problems as individual states are insoluble except in the context of African unity, that our security as individual states is indivisible from the security of the whole continent, that the freedom of our compatriots still in foreign chains and under colonial rule awaits the redeeming might of an African continental government. That's so important there, right? Because a lot of us don't understand out in the diaspora that our freedom as well, our security in the world, our respect and dignity in the world is intertwined with the African continent, right? You know, I'll go deeper later on, but you know, it is intertwined, right? How we got out here is because of what happened on the African continent. When I say got out here, I mean the diaspora. So let me say that last part again. From the security of the whole continent, that the freedom of our compatriots still in foreign chains and under colonial rule awaits the redeeming might of an African continental government. So a united Africa, not necessarily a United States of Africa, because we don't need to reproduce what Europeans are doing ever in the African context. What they do is good for them. What we do has to be culturally relevant and sound in values and principles that work for us, okay? We took a monumental decision at the summit meeting in Addis Ababa last year. No amount of disappointment or impatience with the pace at which our charter has been implemented can detract from the epic making and irrevocable nature of our decision to affirm the unity of our continent. It was an act of faith, a recognition of reality. We forged the Organization of African Unity, fully conscious of all the difficulties facing our various states in committing themselves to common obligations. We have passed through the first year victorious over trials on our loyalty and over hostile forces seeking to disrupt our unity. Wherever, whenever, the subsidiary bodies set up by Addis Ababa Charter have met the spirit of unity, of cooperation and goodwill have prevailed. On that score, none of us can complain. None of us have cause to doubt the strength and permanence of the spirit of unity which found its expression in our charter. Yet, even more than last year, I must urge that the historical condition in which African independence has emerged and the concrete manifestation of our weakness and difficulties call for immense, radical, and urgent measure which the Addis Ababa Conference did not fulfill. Measures which have been accounted adequate for dealing with our problems a few years ago cannot now meet the exigencies of the African Revolution. Let me stop there and say one thing. Let's see if you can see me. Okay. I just did something and I don't know what I did. All right. Okay. Can you guys still see my screen? Yvonne, can they still see my screen?
Yes,
Yvonne?
yes.
Okay, all right. You can still see the words. Okay, good. So I was trying to come back on camera so I can look at you all and talk at the same time, but okay. Let me pause there to say, if you notice that this is 1964, and what happened in the years leading up to this? Ghana gains its independence through political struggle and a number of violent clashes there, although no full-out armed struggle. There are clashes and serious protests and action in the country that brought Ghana to its independence. However, you know, as we've discussed before, no other country on the west coast of Africa has fought an armed struggle outside of Guinea-Bissau, okay? The rest did not fight full-out armed struggles as they do in the east of Africa and parts of Southern Africa, okay? That being said, what was happening leading up to 1964? Well, you had 17 African nations take their independence in 2 years, okay? 1962 and 1963. And I'm highlighting this for a reason because at this moment, people are talking about, you know about the Arab Spring? We're about to see an African Spring. Now, that's a conflict right now in 2023, right? I'm going to get more into that. That being said, 17 African nations took their independence. And I'm going to read them off. I'm going to read them off to you. Right now. However, no one is talking about this then or now in the way that they should, because of the simple fact that they don't want to encourage that, okay? But in those 2 years, 17 African nations would throw off the cloak of colonialism, okay? And that is significant. This, how many years later, we may see an interesting occurrence where African nations will finally, truly throw off the cloak of colonialism, okay? And I wanted to get the list for you all, but okay, I'll probably have to just put it in there, okay? In our course. Hold on one second. Dependence. Hold on one second, folks. And I'm gonna come back on camera. That being said, that's what's leading up to this formation of the Organization of African Unity, okay? This is on the heels of that Nkrumah makes this speech, and Ghana being separate and apart 1957. However, at the forefront of African independence, because he doesn't say we're independent and the rest of you all are not. He says we are independent, and our independence means nothing if it does not reverberate throughout the African continent and on forward to continental unity, a United States of Africa. So I'm actually going to post the famous speech that Nkrumah gives on the eve of the independence of Ghana, so that you can see the passion and the understanding and the foresight that he had, that just one independent African nation on a continent riddled and disturbed by European imperialism is not going to do anything for anyone, right? So Nkrumah understands that, Nkrumah knows that, and he makes that clear to the rest of the world, particularly other African nations, about the fact that this is just the beginning, okay? And so by the time we get to 1964 and he makes this speech and he formulates the Organization of African Unity, 17 nations have taken their independence in just 2 years. I'll put the list in the group, but for the most part, you know, no one talks about it then or now because they don't want to encourage that. That's not something the world wants to encourage. How collectively unified African nations were around this period that they had to have independence. Now, very important, because what happened with African independence is that it was eclipsed, right? There were many things that happened behind the scenes that disrupted this independence. There were many things behind the scenes that compromised independence. In many instances, we have the case of neocolonialism. So the appearance of African independence, but European control and domination on the economic level. So in many ways, African independence was not always fully realized and still is not necessarily fully realized, primarily because of the interruption of African independence by European nations seeking to covet and take the resources, okay? So that's an important thing to understand and know. Once again, so for example, for those of you are familiar with Dr. Arikana, I mean, I should have put in here, and I will share some in the group. She talks about the pact, that the continuation of or the agreement of continuation of colonization in Africa, which basically is, you know, something that European nations forced African leadership to sign in order to continue to exploit the nation's resources for their own purposes. And it has crippled Africa to this day. But at this moment in time, so this lecture connects to both the past and the present, we may see something very interesting in terms of African independence, because many of you know we have been stuck in this neo-colonial stage, and Nkrumah writes about this. He writes about neo-colonialism, the last stage of capitalism. And what he's talking about in Nkrumah is that neo-colonialism, the final stage will be when it adopts Black puppets. Okay, so think about Niger, when it adopts Black puppets, Black people, for the purpose of continuing a colonial regime. So going from European domination, colonialism, to the veil or the appearance of African independence, to the reality of neocolonialism, where we have African leadership, not of the revolutionary brand or orientation, who are there, look like the people, but do not serve the people, are certainly in bed with the exploiters of Africa, right? People, nations that are using Africa and its people as extraction sites. And yes, we are human resources as well. So We are extracted. Our ingenuity, our labor is extracted, utilized, right? So a very utilitarian kind of relationship with external forces. That being said, what the moment we're in now, and this is so important to make those connections, we may see neocolonialism. The people get tired of neocolonialism. Okay, and bring it to an end and align themselves with leadership and determine what leadership is best for Africa, as opposed to people deciding that for Africa and African people. So very important moment we're in now. This, we may see the true struggle for independence, the true liberation of Africa actually happen. We had a pseudo independence happen, 50, 60, 70 years ago. But now we may see true liberation of Africa this time around. So things are brewing. Now, we'll get back to the conversation with Russia. Next week, I will be sharing, or during the week, I'll be sharing, the readings for Nkrumah, but I've been asked to do something different. So there's so much I can cover in the context of this seminar on Pan-Africanism that, I'm going to cover some people and proponents that I haven't covered, like Jomo Kenyatta. I will get back to Amilcar Cabral because he's perfect on the issue of ethnicity, but Jomo Kenyatta and Kenya's struggle and the issue of the Kikuyu and everyone else in terms of the land issue is something I want to address as it relates to our ethnic diversity and strife internally, and how we deal with that in order to forge ahead in a unified way. But for now, what I want you to do is read what I gave you. The rest of that document, I started it out. You have the context. We're coming into 1964 with all of these African nations having taken their independence. Let me see. I'm going to tell you some of them. So we know Ghana is number 1 on the list in 1957. Senegal was 1960. Togo was 1960. Mali was 1960. Madagascar, Madagascar 1960. The Congo, right? Democratic Republic of Congo was 1960. Somalia, 1960. Benin Republic, 1960, Niger, 1960, Burkina Faso, 1960, Cote d'Ivoire, 1960, Chad, Central African Republic, 1960, Congo Republic, Brazzaville, right? The Congo Republic of Congo, 1960, Gabon, 1960, Nigeria, 1960, Mauritania, 1960, Sierra Leone, 1961, Nigeria, British Cameroon, I'm sorry, so Nigeria and Cameroon, so British Cameroon, 1961, so British Cameroon, which was, southern north, and then British Cameroon, which in the south. Okay, so both 1961. Tanzania, 1961. Burundi, 1962. Rwanda, did I say that right, Yvonne? 1962. Algeria, 1962, Uganda, 1962, Kenya, 1963, after a long armed struggle, of course, Malawi, 1964, Zambia. So let me correct myself, 1962, 1963, 17 African nations take their independence, okay? I don't know. Oh, okay, good. Thank you. But what I didn't say correctly was the years. I said 62, 63. It's really from 60 to 63. You have 17 African nations take their independence. But in many ways, I think if we were truly to be honest, for some of those nations, it is a pseudo independence as opposed to true, authentic independence. Because as we see what's playing out now, you have the French, who have always had their grip on various parts of Africa. Notice I said Cameroon and British Cameroon, so the territory colonized by the British, but there's also that part of Cameroon was colonized by the French. And there's much strife in Cameroon between, British Cameroon and French Cameroon, or French-speaking Cameroonians and British Cameroonians. And we have to ask ourselves why. Certainly that was incited because this is not authentically their ethnic conflict. This is as a result of, not to say that there isn't any ethnic conflict, there is, but it has come to play out along linguistic lines and colonial lines. And in spite of the fact that, the people on both sides have existed long before their colonial oppressors arrived, right? So my point of saying all of this is that we will see possibly a struggle for true independence as opposed to pseudo independence. We may see the beginning of the end of neo-colonialism, because the people, what we are trying to do here is learn how to qualify things and that are for Black people, African people. Well, the African people on the continent of Africa are going to have to qualify their leadership to make sure that they are authentically serving the interests of African people and not serving the interests of Europe and Europeans. Right? And so this is the difference between looking at symbolism and really truly qualifying something. Let me just, I'm gonna find our syllabus really quickly. And I just wanna go to that point on the syllabus where I talk about that, qualifying things, and not as one of the key things you should be learning here in the context of this seminar. So we want to look at the interests that people are saying they are advancing. Hold on one second. And I'm going to do this and then I'm out. And I'm over by 9 minutes. But I think that's better than last week. I was really over. Okay, so let me just go back to the syllabus really quickly. Okay, here we go. And then I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Share screen. Start. Okay, so when we talk about we talk about, objectives in terms of what we're trying to do. And this is not just for us. This is for what we're doing in the world, right? And this gives us better understanding of how and what we should do in the world. How we should do what we are doing in the world. The ability to differentiate through an analysis of different case studies built on measured evidence, based assignments and research essays. The ability to apply the knowledge acquired in the seminar to the active role of responsibility as ambassadors of I Love Black People, eradicating racism and xenophobia. The ability to qualify qualify and qualify again everything before declaring it substantial or beneficial to African people locally or globally. And yes, I mean, so the emphasis, I put some extra emphasis on qualifying intentionally, because this is part of assessing whether something is Pan-Africanist, meaning, is it good for all of us collectively? Is this good for African people, as Dr. Marimba Ani talks about? Is this good for all of us, or is this only good for some of us? Okay. And Pan-Africanism, when you weigh and measure it, whatever it is going to produce something for us. So if it is in the arena of resources, then it will be positive and we will benefit. We won't be left empty-handed. It's not positive if we are talking resources and we are robbed and left empty-handed in terms of resources. So I think that's self-explanatory. We have to always qualify. We can't be at a loss on whatever the issue is. Okay, so develop a measurable results orientation regarding business practices and services, policy, and political agendas, legislative initiatives, organizational efforts, and institutional practices. So this is the perfect example. This last objective is a perfect example of what we're seeing play out. We need to see measurable results. If we have a puppet government in place, the people can adequately assess that this particular brand of leadership and leaders are not serving our interests. And we can measure that in the quality of life, in the, economic situation and condition of the people, in light of the resources. And yes, let me be very plain about something. People who come from resource-rich nations should feel the benefit of it. The model that Gaddafi had with regard to Libya before he was assassinated afforded some wealth to Libyans in the country as a result of the nation having a certain amount and certain resources. But that's not what's happening with African nations, whether it's Nigeria or Niger or anywhere on the African continent. African people seem to be the last, if ever, ones to benefit from the resources in their nation. You come from a resource wealthy country, you need to have some level of support and backing as a result of that. And this is not a far-fetched thing, that exists. Some of you know, that exists. That being said, so we want to develop a, measurable results orientation around all that we think about, study, and implement when it comes to Black people and African people. We should be able to see whether or not our hand is empty or our palm is full. Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave it there. Please make sure you read the readings you see right here. So I'm in essence putting it up early, but you should have already watched Cuban African Odyssey. You should have already listened to Women and the African Freedom Struggle by Thomas Sankara. And then, this week we'll be talking more about Kwame Nkrumah and the Pan-African congresses and the Organization of African Unity. And I will discuss some things that I haven't discussed before in our previous sessions about what happened with the Organization of African Unity, how it morphs into the African Union. I'll also delve into a little diasporic history and talk about the founding of the Organization of African American Unity, which was inspired by Nkrumah and was founded by none other than our beloved Malcolm X. Okay, so that's it for now. I'm gonna stop the share. You should be able to see me. I really didn't say much that you should have too much questions about, but I'll just, look at this anyway really quickly. All right. Okay. Thank you. I think these are all about. Okay. Yeah. These are all about the health side. Okay. All right. Well, so it looks like you don't have any questions, and I appreciate that. Thank you everyone for staying to the end. Oh, wait. Okay. Somebody does have a question. What are your thoughts? Thank you, Yazid. What are my thoughts on unity through nonviolence? What are your, well, are you talking about in Africa, or are you talking about in the Western Hemisphere? And yes, in Africa. Nonviolence in Africa is what you're asking me about. That's an interesting question. I think that on the African continent, where we're in the majority, I feel like whatever is necessary. Okay, I think that when you talk about, because see, on the African continent, it's more than just fighting over treatment and things of that nature. On the African continent, what are your thoughts about on achieving unity through so yes, I feel like for African people, we need to achieve unity non-violently. I certainly don't endorse African people of different ethnicities and nationalities fighting it out per se. I know that this is an issue for us everywhere we are. We seem more inclined to be able to perpetuate violence against people who look like us versus people who don't, I mean, I'm always perplexed by some of the things that has happened in South Africa, okay? Because, South Africa has chosen a certain route, even though, don't get me wrong, I'm not taking anything away from I love Malema, all of that, I'm not taking anything away from South Africa on their march to complete and total liberation and a total destruction of the apartheid and any evidence of the apartheid regime in all its form. So I feel like that should always be squashed. But I do think that they have been very generous to the apartheid, the last vestiges of the apartheid regime and all of their supporters, if you could say it that way. And I think that there has been some, issues around treatment of other African people who find themselves in South Africa. That being said, I get it. If anybody who knows the history of the world, that unity is not always forged peacefully. That's a misnomer. People really don't know what how unity necessarily comes about. Sometimes it comes through absorption and domination of another group, and and absorbing other groups. And that can be peacefully, but very often war is involved in that. Going back to the first civilization, the first nation, right? Ancient Kemet. It is unified because the gnomes are absorbed and made part of Kemet. Okay. And then I'm sure they didn't have a picnic to do that, or they didn't have like, a parade to do that. That comes through military clashes and absorption. Right. So I would say for us as African people, we do need to still define unity. We can loosely define it as the unification of African people for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation, meaning that we unify for the purpose of fighting off the cloak of colonialism and neocolonialism. But Nkrumah defines Pan-Africanism different. Unification of African people under scientific socialism. That's okay too. We can do that as well. But I think for us, we would want to engage in some level of nonviolent unification practices because our interests are so intertwined. Okay. Now, that being said, when it's understood that certain entities are of the neo-colonial brand and owned by the West, then I would say that, you treat an enemy as an enemy. Okay, I think that's why people have an issue with puppet governments, because they look like the people, but they don't function in the vein and in the best interest of the people. Okay, so I don't want to get into, I'm not promoting any violence, but I feel safe saying that on the African continent, I trust that when the people and the consciousness are at the highest level of political maturity, they will know who needs to be exiled and who can stay. You even see this, there's some graciousness that has happened in West African nations with leaders who did not always serve the full interest of the people and needed to be expelled. They were not expelled violently. I can give in the case of Gambia and Yahya Jammeh. Yahya Jammeh was not necessarily the best leader for Gambia, right? But he was not expelled violently. And not being the best, and don't get me wrong, he was very African-centered, he's very, nationalistic and all of that. But the treatment of the people in Gambia and the things that have happened in Gambia under Yahya Jammeh were not the best. And there were a lot of things that had to be reconciled. Of course, some of you know there were tribunals and all of that kind of stuff after his regime, after his leadership, like 20-something years. But he was not killed. He was expelled, and he was even allowed later on to come back and bury his mother or a close relative there in the country without the threat of death. Okay. So I'm not saying that for us to achieve the kind of unity we need, that we have to engage in violence. I think in relationship to the West, when Africa needs to protect itself in a unified fashion, then so be it, right? But when you're talking about between African nations and African ethnicities, I think it's fine to make things plain, to use a strong hand, but not always feel like we have to mimic the worst of humanity and be violent with each other. We can save some of that energy for people who have unleashed waves of violence on us everywhere on this globe, right? We can save some of that, okay? It's okay not to, it's, you know, it's a good thing to have power, but know how to be balanced with it. So the leadership that comes into Gambia after Yahya Jammeh didn't say, you come back in this country, we kill you. They didn't say that. They did make it clear that you must leave. And still was gracious enough to say, yes, your mother has passed away, your loved one has passed away. You can come and bury them in Gambia, your home. But you still, when you're done, leave. Okay? So that's my answer. That's a really complicated question. Well, I would have to know your positioning. I don't know what country you're in. I would have to know your positioning in terms of, but I would definitely, looking at the issues arising, how do we mobilize for change with the respect to, you align yourself with what you believe in the sense that Niger is, you know, wants to be independent, wants to be free. They have actually, you know, yes, they have removed a puppet government. And then you have, of course, support for, you know, the removal of that. We know what the West wants to do right now with Niger. We know what they want in terms of resources. I think this is the moment. I think you're going to see so many nations supporting Niger. I would say in your country or wherever you are, you tell the powers that be and on the ground that you can march, organize in support of Niger. That's an important thing. Maybe I should do a whole session on that, how to support Niger and other African nations who have arrived at this moment once again where we get to say that, you know, now we're going to dig deep and really qualify European presence and imperialist interest in the African continent, and no more, no more, no more, you know, like there has to be a day. Yeah, for sure. I will definitely do that because it's important. It's not just Niger. You're about to see all this support from nations that are in the same position. Okay, and I'm looking at, you know, Burkina Faso. We did, of course, I did the presentation on Thomas Sankara, but you have a young leader there in Burkina Faso wearing the red beret like Thomas Sankara, in the same vein, young and hopeful, you know, supportive of the right forces in Africa. And we may see something different. I think I'm hopeful that we will see something different happen, you know. So there's like the fakery that happened in this period we discussed today, you know, and I mean the fakery in the sense that we know now in retrospect, most of these independence movements and transfers of independence on the African continent were just political. Economically, that's not what they were. European nations still had their hands in the coffers of African countries. Okay. And so African people have never really fully been able to benefit from African independence the way they have the right to. But this moment is different. This is as a result of people being tired of not benefiting from their independence, tired of pseudo-independence and neo-colonialism. And so what they must have and what they will demand is that we're going to have real independence, economic and otherwise. So this is a qualifying moment. It's very important. And so, yeah, I'll make sure gear my presentation and some of our readings that we share between. But please make sure you watch Cuba and African Odyssey. It sort of gives you some understanding of external forces and how it helped. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, we're talking about a global phenomenon. How can people in the diaspora support what's going on in Africa? That's a perfect example, Cuba and African Odyssey. They were able to do that militarily and resource-wise and strategically. But how can we support in this day and age? What does that look like, between the diaspora and the African continent, or between other African nations and the nations that are on front and center on the world stage in terms of struggling against capitalism? I'm just going to say it: capitalism, exploitation, and imperialism in Africa, right? So what does that look like? So we can strategize around that. I'm going to stop there because I thought I was doing good, but now I didn't do so good because I did Q&A and I'm far over. All right. Looking at issues arising, how we mobilize. Okay, so that was my best answer, but I will talk some more about that because I'm sure there are other ways that we can support Niger and all the countries that I really truly think that there are going to be many more countries that end up in this situation. Okay, and I have heard it a couple of times that you can expect there to be an African spring. I expect the same thing. I absolutely expect that. Okay, and I'm looking forward to that. There's no better time than now. Oh, great. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you. God bless. All right. So I am because we are. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next week. And we're going to keep the conversation going. I had a couple of other things that I'm going to share. I think I'm going to share probably on Monday the resolutions for the 1st and the 5th Pan-African Congress. And then, some other things that are relevant to what we're talking about. Okay. All right. I am because we are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Wright, for this. I also would like to thank everyone that stayed on the call until the end. I am because we are. Have a nice weekend. See you next Saturday.